Today is October the 12th, 2007. Now, for the purpose of this recording, I'm Gregory Hall. I'm here with Mickey Workman, who talked to me earlier in the summer when we looked at some of his photographs and made a note of what they were about. And he's agreed to come back and do a proper interview with me here. And so we'll get started. I'm remembering that in my first conversation with him, Mickey talked about, I think you live across the road from your grandfather's house, the Workman house.
Yeah.
And you had told me kind of an interesting story about how that house got started. And so if you want to begin there, talking about your grandfather or your father and your family, we'll start there.
Well, we'll just start with Granddad because my granddad made a cattle drive from the rock pens at Mason, Texas to somewhere in Kansas. Way back, I'd say, I don't know what is it, probably in the 1880s, late 70s or 80s. And they went through an old fort up there somewhere, and the officers' quarters were built like that old house. And so when he come home, he told the guys that he was going to build his house like that, them officers' quarters. And so the old house that's existing now, which is falling in, he built it like the officers' quarters, except he didn't put the porches all the way around on the top and bottom. And he went from up there in Kansas, he went to wherever Old Faithful's at, come back through Nebraska, and when he got to some person's house he knew in Nebraska, while they looked up and saw a cloud coming, and it was grasshoppers. And they all went to putting the animals in the barn and drawing water and getting in the house. And he said that this guy had an orchard. Excuse me. And when the grasshoppers hit, they stayed for 3 days. And he said they eat the bark off of the trees, every bit of the grass. There was nothing left from a strip about 6 miles wide and 25 miles long. And I thought he was kidding until I saw some of the effects that they have today in Africa and other places. And of course, we still have grasshoppers here too, but that was something back in those days when they didn't have any way to poison them out.
Now, was that before he married?
Yeah.
That was before he married, and
yeah.
Approximately, you say that, now that's when he saw the house, so that would have been after the Civil War.
Oh yeah, it was probably, I'd say it was in the 1880s. I don't really know the exact date, but he built the old house. In 1914, he finished the old house in 1914, but he was living at west of Leonard, a place called Blanton's Chapel, and he moved there in 1888, and him and my grandmother, and they stayed there till 1914 when he finished that house, bought this place over here at Angel Flat and built that house and finished it in 1914.
Okay, now let's get on the record here. Your grandfather's name was?
Samuel Kenyon Workman.
And he married?
You know, I don't really remember what Ma's name was. I'll think of Stella Q. Randall.
Stella Q. Randall. She was a Randall.
She was Randall, and they all lived in Missouri. My granddad's folks were all Indians, and they skipped out in Missouri when they come over the Trail of Tears, and they raised my great-great-granddad raised his family there, and after the Civil War, I never could figure out why they joined the Union forces, but him and his 5 brothers joined the Union forces, and when the war was over, they bought where downtown Branson, Missouri is now, 640 acres down where downtown Branson, Missouri is now.
Your grandfather or your great-grandfather?
My great-grandfather and his brothers.
And his brothers.
Yeah.
Now, did they stay there or did they migrate on to Texas?
Well, they just migrated everywhere. There was, like I say, there's 5 of them brothers, and three of them named their first son Sam. So there was an Oklahoma Sam, Arkansas Sam, and a Texas Sam. And I've got kin folks all over Oklahoma and everywhere else that I've never met. Of course, they just, families divided out. Some of them went, one bunch of them went to around where Lubbock's at. One bunch went over here to where Altus, around Altus, Oklahoma, and back in there. And then there was another bunch stayed in Arkansas and Missouri, and one bunch went to Louisiana. And, of course, I don't know any of them.
So now the Texas Sam was your grandfather.
That's right.
Who built the house over here.
Right.
Now that we're talking about the house just a little bit. Of course, I see it there. Was that the way it was originally when he built the part that looked like the officers' quarters, or did he add on to that house later?
Well, when he bought the place, there was a 2-room house that was sitting there, and he tore the top off the house and built the old big house around it. And that old house has been there since before the Civil War, I'm sure, because my granddad Odom on my mother's side said that it was an old place whenever he was a little boy, and he was born in 1894, so I'm sure it was probably older than the hills.
Well, I learned later that it wasn't that uncommon for people to build around an earlier house.
Yeah.
That's the way Dr. Smith's house over here on the Smith Plantation was. They built around an earlier house.
Well, I can't remember who it was. Somebody told me here a while back, several years ago, they tore into the house, going to redo the inside of a modern house, and it had a log cabin was built on it, and they'd built it around a log cabin.
Yeah. Now, do you live now across the road from that house?
Yes, I do.
Now, is that family land that...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, your father was...
Workman.
Workman.
Mm-hmm.
And he had
three
brothers and sisters?
He had 3 sisters. No brothers, had 3 sisters. There was Ophi Young, and Ethel Young, and Georgie Whistnut.
And Georgie married
David Whistnut.
David Whistnut. All right, I've already encountered a part of their story.
Yeah.
With LQ Whistnut. So your father basically grew up in that house there then.
That's right.
And now you were born when?
I was born in 42.
You were born in 42.
Yeah.
Now, did you ever live in that house with your dad? Or
I was raised in that house.
You were raised in that house?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. And as you were growing up, I suppose, given your interests, you must have heard many stories. You mentioned the one about your grandfather going up into the upper western part. You must have heard other stories. Was he a rancher, or what did he do primarily?
Well, he was mostly a farmer. They raised wheat when they first come to this country. The reason he come here, he was. I used to have a letter, but I can't find it. But he wrote to Ma, and he told her he'd found what he was looking for. He'd found wheat land at Blue Ridge, Texas. So he went back, and him and Ma married, and they got in a covered wagon, and they come to Fannin County. And that was, I believe that was in 1887, I believe. And they went to Blue Ridge, and they stayed a year at Blue Ridge, and then they come to Blanton's Chapel, over west of Leonard. And I can remember Granddad telling about he liked to, of course, them Indians liked to fish, and he'd come to Red River fishing. And he was...
Would that have been a day's trip at least?
Oh, yeah. And I've heard him tell many a time about being in Bonham when they laid the cornerstone for the courthouse that's there now.
Yeah.
And that was I believe 1888, I believe.
Right.
And
so he was there when they laid the cornerstone.
Yeah.
My goodness.
And back years ago they used to have them first Mondays, and the older men didn't miss them first Mondays, but my granddad was a farmer, and he raised wheat and grain and stuff out there on the black land, and then he decided I guess he was too far from Red River, so he bought this place over here at home, where we call home now.
Yes.
And he basically farmed, and after he got down here, he got into the horse and jack business, and they raised and sold mules and horses, and whenever I was a kid, he still had one old jackass out there that he called old Levi, and my dad and Uncle Dave Westonhunt just hated that old jack, but he was better than an alarm clock, because at 6, 12, and 6 he brayed.
You brought these photographs here, and you mentioned Blanton Springs. Is that
No, this
is this a different?
No, this is old man Ben Blanton and his family.
Okay.
Old man Ben Blanton married my granddad's sister.
Okay, but did you mention Blanton Springs somewhere earlier just now? As a place that he came to? I guess
No, he come to Blanton's Chapel, west
Blanton's
of Leonard.
Chapel. Is this family related to that site, so far as you know?
You know, I don't know whether those Blantons are kin or not.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about maybe this photograph later, but you can at least identify your grandfather here in this picture, because he's the one holding the pistol in his hand. And then there's another guy here.
That's old man Ben Blanton.
With the long beard.
Yeah.
And then there's another one. Well, there's a bicycle behind him.
The two of them.
Okay.
There's one at the corner of the house.
Do you know where this picture was made, maybe?
It's made on Caney Creek. I don't know where he lived.
Caney Creek?
Yeah.
Really? Here in Fannin County?
Yeah. Now, whenever I knew the old man, we used to go visit him. They lived back up somewhere about where that 898 crosses Caney up there.
Okay.
Somewhere in that area.
Okay.
But I think before they had lived back down in here, further down the creek here someplace. But
well, it probably wouldn't be that hard to find where they actually lived in deed records here in the county.
Probably could.
Okay.
Because I thought of it. And you remember Roscoe?
Yes.
I think Roscoe was one of his sons.
Okay.
It might have been a grandson. I can't remember. I know my dad and Roscoe was cousins. So that had to be one of his sons.
Did you hear your grandfather tell? Do other stories come to mind that you've always heard your grandfather tell?
Oh yeah, I've heard whenever they lived in Missouri, why they made their living hunting, and they'd sell hides and meat at Springfield. And I've heard him tell about, he said he had killed as high as 7 deer a day with a bow and arrow. And of course, back in them days, the wild turkeys, he said, was just everywhere. He said they didn't even mess with them. And he said sometimes if one of the guys in Springfield wanted some turkeys, well, they'd kill him a few turkeys and dress them, but there wasn't no money in killing them turkeys because there's so many of them. But the deer, I forgot what he said they could get for the hide and the meat, but that's the main way they made their living. And they raised hogs, and I've heard him tell about. It sounds crazy, but they drive them hogs to market, and they're at Springfield when they raised them hogs. And I've heard him tell about him killing his first turkey with some kind of an old rifle. His dad has gone somewhere, and he got the old rifle down and poked it out the window of this log cabin and shot a turkey and actually killed him. He's a little old kid.
You don't happen to remember his birth date, do you? What year he was born, your grandfather? We can probably get that from a family record here.
I think he was born in '67. I believe that's right. Mm-hmm. September the 23rd, '67, I believe.
Now, when he came on down toward this way, did you say he came with brothers?
No, he came by himself.
Came by himself?
Yeah.
All right. Don't want to get that confused.
Now one of his dad's brothers went to the gold rush in California. Oh. Now, I don't know why Indian had been wanting to go to the gold rush, but he did. Of course, I guess they roamed all over the country, just everywhere.
Were there stories of that he knew, or that you?
Well, I don't remember what he just said. He went out there, but I heard him tell that stories about, he said the fiddle saved more white men than any other one thing because you never saw an Indian that didn't like fiddle music. And he said them Indians would hide out around them camps where them people camped out at night so they could listen to the music.
Now, did he have any, any particular stories about his move down this way, though? Things that might have happened to him, people he encountered along the way?
Well, somewhere, I don't know where they're at. They're still over at that old house, I'm sure, but they're not brass knucks, they're steel. He had a set, Ma had a set, and they had pistols, them old octagon barrel pistols, and whenever I was a kid, Mother made Dad give the old pistol away because I'd get it and play with it. But back in them days, it was after the Civil War, and nobody had nothing, and they was muggers everywhere, and they come down here evidently by themselves. And he said that you had to be careful at night. If you didn't camp by nobody or let nobody camp close to you because they'd kill you for your stock and what little stuff you had.
Now, was that particularly on the way down here?
Yeah, it was on the way down here from Missouri, yeah. And I'd say that was in the I think 87 is when he went back and got Ma and brought her down here, I think. 86 or 7, anyway.
Now, was she from Missouri?
Yeah.
Okay, so he went back and got her.
And her folks, I can't remember what her dad's name was, but he went to New Mexico, and he taught masonry out there for years and years and years. And I was at a museum in San Angelo, Texas one time, and the museum had the old man's guns. And so I asked the woman at the museum where they got the guns, and she wanted to know why. And I told her, I said, well, they're my great-granddad's. And and she said, well, we got cards in here, so we can tell where everything comes from. And so she went through the cards, and didn't nobody have nothing on the card. There wasn't no cards on the gun, so she didn't know where they come from. But I'm telling you, them old buffalo rifles, them old 50 calibers, they couldn't have whooped me and made me shot one of them things.
How long were they?
Oh, man, I'd say as long as we are tall, and looked like the hole is that big around in that barrel. I mean, it had a guy, if he shot one of them things very many times a day, I don't see how he could move.
Goodness. Now, when you found them at the museum, were they properly labeled?
They told what guns it was and who they belonged to, but
they just didn't have a card on.
They didn't have a card to tell who had donated the guns.
I see.
Because I think by law they're supposed to have cards that tells whoever.
Sure. Yeah.
But that was pretty interesting.
Well, of course, after the Civil War, and you mentioned that his family had been involved on the northern side.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did that ever cause any comment down here, or did he ever relate to that Union background after he got down here, or what was his attitude toward that?
Well, them Indians just let bygones be bygones. Now, whenever them guys got out of the Civil War, my great-granddad's brothers, well, they bought 640 acres where downtown Branson, Missouri is now. But as far as the war, it wasn't never, they didn't have nothing for the Yankees. And I don't know why they didn't fight for the South, because they'd moved, and my great-great-granddad had come over the Trail of Tears.
Yes.
And I mean, that hadn't been that many years before, and they took everything. And I've heard my grandpa, he's told me many a time, he'd bounce me on his knee when I was a little boy, and he'd tell stories about things that happened, and he'd ask me who I thought was the savage, the white man or the Indian.
Uh-huh.
And when his people, whenever they run them out in Georgia over there, they was living in bricks homes and had plantations.
Sure they did.
And slaves too.
Right.
And my granddad or great-granddad, either one, wouldn't sign them Indian rolls, because that they was claiming kin to the colored folks. And he said that he wouldn't. And whenever I was a kid, they was still sending him stuff. And, they closed them rolls, I thought, in 1893, didn't they?
Now, which rolls again?
Them Cherokee rolls.
Okay, go ahead.
And but they had never signed them. And Granddad had land up there. He said he didn't need none of that Indian land. He had land himself up there oh, I can't think of whatever that name of that river is over there by Hugo. And it was strange happenings. They just, and them Indian people, they live different from what white people do. Them people, they called them savages, but actually most of them Cherokee Indians was Baptist, and they moved their church with them when they come over that Trail of Tears, and you can go up to Tahlequah, and they got pictures up there at Tahlequah. I ain't got no pictures of it, but I know it's a fact because I've seen it on them shows on TV. And they loved life, and they loved to talk. And I can remember whenever I was a kid, they'd come over at the house and they'd jump out of them old cars. And one guy especially, the first thing he'd do was go to chasing chickens. First one he caught, it didn't make no difference if it was a hen or rooster or what. He jerked that head off, cleaned it. He wanted fried chicken.
Now, tell me again, just to be sure I get this straight, because your grandfather was an Indian.
He was half-breed.
Half Indian.
Great-granddad enough to marry back full-bloods.
All right. Now, you mentioned Indians who would visit coming out of Indian Territory out of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Even when you were a kid growing up.
Yes, sir.
Now, did they know that there was a family connection, or are they just some association that they...
Oh no, most of them was family. Now there was some old people who lived over here across the river that my granddad visited regular. One of them made arrowheads.
Okay.
And but I'm sure that they had probably known each other maybe in Missouri, maybe.
Yes.
You know, and but he told me many a time that he went to Pitcher, Oklahoma. And he got my granddad. My granddad was still wearing buckskins and braids. My great-granddad.
Yes.
And he bought him some white men's clothes and cut his hair off so they wouldn't know he's Indian, and brought him down here to over to the old home place over there.
Yes.
And even back in them days and way on back, a lot of his brothers and them in Missouri, they worked in the coal mines. And after everything settled down after the Civil War, well, them older boys, my granddad's uncles and all of them, they worked in them coal mines, and him and his brothers worked in the coal mines too. After they got up big enough before he left, but he had to be he left by the time he was about 20 years old, so I don't know how old he was when he went to work in them coal mines, but he was 87 years old when he died, and he was still spitting up coal dust.
Now, you have a photograph of a relative, a man named John. Was he the man who was the boxer?
Yeah.
How was he related to your grandfather?
He was his brother.
All right. Now, did you tell me earlier that he had worked in the coal mines as well?
That's where the
fight occurred.
That's where the fight started. When they'd take breaks in them coal mines, and they'd have two guys that have a fight for just sport, you know.
Yes.
And then whoever could whoop all the guys working one mine, they'd pit them against some other mine somewhere else, and that's where the picture come where him and the colored guy was having a fight, and he beat the colored man to death.
And he actually died.
Oh, yeah.
And you have that photograph of them before the fight.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. My goodness. Now, did that Brother John ever come on down toward Texas, or did he stay up there?
He went to Kansas, and I don't know. I used to know where he was buried, but I can't remember. Now, my great-granddad went back to Pitcher, Oklahoma. And my great-granddad's buried at Pitcher. And I think Uncle John's buried I don't think he's buried that Pitcher. I believe he's buried someplace right across the line there in edge of Kansas. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's very far, maybe 10 miles or something apart.
Did you ever meet him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He was a preacher. Uncle John made a preacher. And he got one of his arms blowed off in the mines. And I like to watch him. He could tie a tie faster with one hand. I never could tie a tie anyway, but he could tie one with one hand. Just I don't know how he could do it, but he did. Mm-hmm. He had her tied.
My goodness.
But he'd come down here sometime whenever I was a kid, he might stay 2 or 3 weeks or a month. And everybody back in them days, you know, they lived off the farm. They raised everything they had, and we all had plenty.
Yeah.
Didn't have no money, but we had plenty to eat.
Sure.
And everybody was happy. But it's a different society. People can't realize today, the kids coming on, they don't know what they missed when they missed being raised on a farm.
Oh, absolutely. Did you go to school in Ivanhoe? Where did you go to school?
I went to school at Bonham.
From the beginning?
Yeah.
Really?
Now my great granddad on my mother's side had a place right there, right north of us, that joined us. My granddad Workman's place, and his name was Sam F. Odom, and he donated a block of land there for a church and school, and he called it Angel Flat, and they had a school there at Angel Flat. I'm sure you can remember that it finally consolidated with Bonham, I think about 45 or something, 47, something like that. And so anyway, old man Frank Brown from down Telephone was a bus driver, and he'd come by and pick up the kids. Of course, back in them days, bus drivers owned their buses themselves.
Sure.
And so the kids had to walk. It didn't make no difference how far they lived from the highway. They had to walk the highway to catch a bus, because that's the only place the bus runs, up and down the highway, because there wasn't no paved roads in them days except just 78. And the Ravenna Road up there that goes 1753 goes through Ravenna, and 82 up there at Bonham. That's about all the roads there was till I was nearly grown.
So you're saying the bus in that day and time didn't go off the main highway into the communities?
No, sir. No, sir.
See, when I was going from Mulberry, we drove through every little community between Mulberry and Bonham. Sandy and Ravenna and Nunley. That was quite an experience every day.
No, when Mr. Brown he didn't get off the highway.
Yeah.
And we'd walk down there to the highway, us boys would, and fall of the year. They had them old canes growing down there, and we'd take us some knives and cane knife, we'd go down there and we'd chop them up. That's our firewood for the winter. We'd pile them things up there. I don't see how them people from Oklahoma, I bet a lot of times couldn't see how to get up and down the road with the smoke coming out of that cover, because us boys would build us a big fire. If it's bad cold, we'd build a big fire under there, and that smoke would be coming out from under that cover.
Waiting for the school bus to come?
Oh, yeah.
Sure,
yeah.
Waiting for the school bus to come.
Yeah.
Right.
And, of course, back in them days, too, and I know that you done the same thing. When the kids got in from school, they hit them fields in the fall to pull them boats. And I sort of like a monkey, I just come natural for me pulling them boats. And sometimes with bus would get in about 4 o'clock, and we'd walk to the house. It takes about 10 minutes to get to the house. We lived, wasn't quite a half mile off the road. And we'd run in there, change clothes, and get our sacks, whoop out there at the field, and sometimes I could pull 200 before they quit of an evening, and that's more than some of the grown women could pull.
Now, was that on the family place that
Yeah.
you were growing cotton then?
Oh yeah, and my dad farmed till he got to where he wasn't able, but then Carl Haynes, he farmed my other grandmother's place and our place too after Dad had to quit.
Now, were there on your grandfather's place or your dad's place, were there tenant farmers living on the place, or did you all work it yourself?
No, we worked all over ourselves. Now, part of the time back whenever I was a little bitty kid, Uncle Fred Young farmed a little bit of it, and of course we hoed it and everything. He was working at Perry Field when the World War II would come off, and he was working at Perry Field, and sometimes he'd plow his block and have it planted, and of course we had to go up there, and when we got Dad's hoed out, we just hoed his too, and I can remember hearing him, my dad and granddad talk about during the Depression that nobody had any money, and they planted 5 acres of orange potatoes, and they made enough orange potatoes on that 5 acres. They dug them and hauled them to Bonham in a wagon and sold them. and they got enough money out of them potatoes to buy them 4 men a suit of khaki clothes piece off 5 acres of potatoes. And I can tell you, there's lots of taters in 5 acres.
Well, of course, since you went to school in Bonham, they didn't necessarily delay the start of school for the cotton picking season.
Oh, no, but
in
you
some
can.
of the country.
Oh, I like Ivanhoe,
Yeah.
yeah. They had 2 different seasons there. They'd take out in the summertime. They'd have a season of school right in the middle of summertime when they got the crop laid back, and then when they got ready for the cotton come in, well, they'd let school out, so they could pick. But what we did is when we got our crop laid by the time we got all of the stuff we had, the 2 different, I don't know how many acres it was, but there's, I don't know, probably, I imagine 150 acres probably between my granddad's place, both granddad's places. But anyway, by the time we got that hoed over and plowed and laid by, why the cotton on the black land would be ready to pull. And so we'd take and we could make enough money. Me and my dad and my brother could make enough money pulling bowls to buy all the food we needed for the winter. And we'd go out there, and usually about the earliest I remember going out there and start pulling was the 8th day of August. And back in them days, school didn't start in Bonham till I believe it was the 16th of September is when it started. And so we got to pull over a month. And by the time I was 10 years old, I could pull 400 a day easy. And we'd go out there and we'd pull bowls. Old man Matlock lived down north of us, and he had an old 36 Dodge, I believe it was Dodge, truck. And we'd all pile in the back end of that thing and head out there for that black land. Dad take a milk can. He'd back years past, he'd had a dairy, and we get one of them milk cans. We stop out at the ice plant in Bonham and put ice in it. And of course, we'd get out there, and the first thing them people out there would do is drink all that good Red River water we had, and then we'd have to start drinking that pollywog water. And people don't realize, I used to have a saying that you ought to be able to recognize everybody that lives south of Bonham by the knee pads on their pants, because they ought to wear out them knees thanking God for them water systems that they got now. Because we'd go out there and they'd have them old cisterns out there, and they kept fishing them cisterns to eat them bugs and stuff out of it, fish. And we'd all get sick drinking that pollywog water. Us people have been used to drinking good water, we couldn't take that pollywog water.
Out of your own wells here.
Huh?
Out of your own wells here, I guess. Or did you have cisterns here too? Or
no, they had cisterns. They had cisterns out on the black land.
Out there on the black land, but you had.
We had wells, yeah.
Well water here.
And we had that good well water. Them people, they drank it up fast. Yeah. And then we'd have to start in on that pollywog water, and it'd make all of us sick till we got used to it. After you got used to it, it didn't bother you. But
did you have to spend the night when you went out there and picking?
No,
we'd come back every day.
Yeah, we had. Everybody had cows and hogs and
to take care of.
Yeah, after they got home, yeah. And I remember when I was a kid, we never did have a pump on that well. I mean, it was running water. You run from the well to the house with it in a bucket. And we'd draw water for them animals. Of course, we had a creek down there for the cattle and stuff. But the hogs, we had to draw their water.
Now you're talking about with a well bucket and a rope.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I've still got the well bucket and rope there at the house. Got 2 of them.
Right.
And I can remember that with them hogs, they didn't kill a hog back in them days. These things they kill nowadays, they called them shoats. Right. And if a hog didn't weigh 500 pounds, he didn't have a thing to worry about being killed around our place. So if he didn't weigh 500 or 600, he was safe as in the hands of God. But me and my brother, Dad would make us haul water out there and make them hogs a mud hole. And we'd get them buckets. Our well was 58 foot deep. And it was about, I'd say, I don't know, I was probably 200 foot downhill down there beside that hill. On the side of that hill, they had a big old barn there and had that hog pen there in that barn. And usually we'd keep 10 or 12 hogs, and about November, along about Thanksgiving, He'd come when the first big cold spell to come, where they'd kill hogs, and we had the only scalding vat in the country, and people leave them up like boiling up in there. Some people they'd had all have different jobs, around the hog killing. Part of them was maybe keeping wood to keep for the fire, and some of them was hauling water, and some of them was killing them, hauling them in there. And I've seen them killed as high as 25, 30 a day there, and hang them. Back in them days, there was 3 humongous elm trees out there in that yard, and they'd have hogs hanging up. I've seen them pull them up to tractors and old cars. They'd use them. Oh, I can't even think what they call that single tree. Use them single trees, haul them up there and tie them off, and they'd get them up off the ground high enough the dogs or nothing couldn't get a hold of them, let them cool out, and then they'd chop them up. Daddy would chop them up, and where the people could come and get their hog. And back in them days, people nowadays don't know what good meat is. And when you've had some of that home sugar cured meat, the guy knew what he's doing. You had something fit to eat.
Now that would typically be on a cold day sometime.
Oh yeah. They would. It had to be cold.
It had to be a cold day.
And my dad we'd usually kill 6 in the fall, and then they'd kill about anywhere 2 to 4 about the last of March, to last through the summer. And they'd take them crock jars. I seen my grandma and mama, they'd take them 10-gallon crock jars, and they'd grind that meat up, that sausage meat up, and they'd cook them sausages, and they'd pack them down in that crock, and then they'd pour grease over the top of them, and they'd just keep layers after layer, a layer of meat and then a layer of that grease.
And when you say grease, do you mean hog
lard? Hog lard
that they'd rendered?
Yeah, hog lard, yeah.
I remember something called chitlins. Did we call them chitlins?
Yeah, they had chitlins.
Sometimes we'd eat
yes, sir.
a few that were hot right out of the wash pot.
That's right. Made that crackling cornbread.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then my dad liked something called grease gravy out of ham.
Oh, yeah. Red-eye gravy.
Red-eye gravy.
Yeah.
That's what he called it.
Yep, them was good days.
Did they ever have in your part of the country something called threshing machines that moved around?
Oh yeah, they had that.
Community to community.
Yeah, stationary thrashers.
Right, stationary thrashers.
And whenever I was a little old kid, of course, I just come on at the time that they was fixing to go out, and they'd right after the war there. I can remember that. Bill Kirk and Archie Kirk and them 2 Burger boys, Victor and I can't remember what that other boy's name was, but they all worked and I can't remember who the thrashing machine belonged to, but they'd set that old stationary thrasher out there. The people would dig them peanuts and just roll them up, out there with them. And then they'd come in there and they'd set that thrasher up, and the guys would take horses and a wagon or tractors, whatever they had, and they'd take pitchforks and they'd load them peanuts on them wagons, and they'd haul them to the thrasher. And that reason I remember the stationary thrashers as good as them cooking them thrasher dinners for them guys to eat when they now
was the women did that as it moved around from farm to farm?
Yeah, all them women, them women on them farms, they'd cook dinner for them guys, and that was work back in them days. They'd have part of the guys would be hauling them to the thrasher, and then they'd have guys at the thrasher they'd throw them in that hopper. Of course, it was thrashing them and throwing that hay out the back, and they had to be moving that out of the way. And then they had guys just like it was on a regular machine. Was sacking them peanuts and sewing them sacks, and they had to keep them thrown out of the way. And it was the same way with them old stationary balers. And
now it's interesting you mentioned peanuts, because in my time it was wheat and oats.
Oh yeah.
And the thresher created a big haystack.
Right.
And we thought that was fun.
Right.
And the guys were bringing the shocks of wheat in. Did they do that? Was there wheat also?
Oh yeah.
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 Okay, that's what I'm thinking about.
But I remember whenever I was a kid, they was having one of them getting ready early one morning, probably about this time of day, and back in them days they cooked them wood stoves. They didn't know what that butane and stuff was, electricity. I mean, we didn't even have electricity. And I run through the house, and I'd been used to eating sausage, raw sausage. I like them raw sausages just as good as cooked ones. And I run through, and they had a big old dish pan full of this meat, and I thought it was sausage. And I run by and grabbed me a handful, and it was that ground beef. And I can tell you, the ground beef don't taste like sausage.
Well, was that before? Did you live in the time when there were mules pulling those wagons, or?
Oh yeah. We still had mules, but
Yeah,
I don't know what year my dad got that. He had bought a little old farm all tractor, and most of them had them 8 Fords or whatever it was. Them,
yeah.
and they was real good, best garden tractors that the man nearly ever saw, because they'd go so slow that you could just nearly pull the weeds out with them. And then they got them Ford Fergusons, and they had more plows on the cultivator than the Ford did. I can't remember. Seemed to me like they had 12 plows, wasn't it? I can't really remember how many they had on there, but they had more plows on them, and you could just take everything out with them Ford Fergusons when they got them.
Now, when you were pulling bowls, did you have cotton on your own place here?
Oh yeah.
So where'd you go to gin? In Ivanhoe or where?
No, they took it to Bonham.
Took you to Bonham.
Yeah. Now whenever I was a little bitty kid, they still run. I don't know. They were still coming through there, and I guess they was taking it to Ivanhoe. But that was the main road there in front of that old house for years. Because I forgot, it seemed to me like it was in the 20s, it seemed to me like when they built 78 and brought it on down through to the river. And the road went over there west of Q-Clan, back down through by Bobby Jones, right by the old Bozeman place, and then come out the old Cordwood Lewis place, and then come right on straight down in front of Granddad's place, and on around by the Angel Flat School. And down there on the river down there, the Phillipses, they had the ferry that went across the river there. And the old ferry landing is still down there. I can still take you down there and show you the old ferry landing.
Do you remember the ferry?
No.
It
No.
was already...
No, it was they. I don't know what year that they done away with the ferry, but I'm sure it probably wasn't long after they made that road, and that road was put through there. I just seemed to me like it was the late 20s or early 30s when they put that road in there.
Now, when did you start playing ball? Was that in Bonham, or did you all have
we played
teams out?
We played ball
In the country.
Yeah, we played ball all over. Us kids gang up played ball. Well, the men, and back in them days, every community had a ball team, like Ravenna and Ivanhoe and Telephone and Monkstown and Honey Grove, and all, they'd all gang up and
Now, these are grown men.
Yeah. But us kids, we'd just gang up and play, and then after we got going to school there at Bonham, they teams up, and we played there at Bonham. They got what they called Little League finally there in them early 50s, and I played ball till I couldn't, but I was a catcher, and I busted this bone in my hand. I can still get a few licks on that hand. It'll still swell up. The bone's still floating in there, but I played ball till I was grown.
Did you know a player called Roy McMillan?
Roy McMillan, he was sort of a hero to all us boys. He played for Cincinnati Reds, I believe it was, and he'd come home every year, and along about the time that we'd have the playoffs and stuff, us kids would. And I know he gave the team I played on won the championship there one year, and he gave us all a little silver baseball about that big around, and I've still got mine over at the house.
Well, sorry.
Yeah, I knew Roy and his brother too. He was just like a vacuum cleaner. They hit the ball on the ground. They just oughtn't to have done it because he.
So when did you finally quit playing ball?
Oh, just before married.
Yeah. And who did you marry?
I married Linda Stevens, Elmer Joe Stevens, his oldest daughter, at Ivanhoe.
From Ivanhoe.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And you have children?
Had one daughter. I got a daughter named Leslie Ann, and she's lives in Hearst, and she works for one of the state agencies that takes care of these children from out of state that's been mistreated. I don't know what you call it, but
Well, you're still playing music, though. Now, tell me, when did you start playing music, and what instrument did you play? And you sing too, as I understand it.
Well, whenever I was a kid, we had a wind charger on the house, for lights. That's before the days of electricity, and of course, back in them days, they got smart just like they are now. And them women had soap operas they listened to on the radio, and they had Maul Perkins and Stell Dallas and Just Plain Bill. And one of them guys played a harmonica when he'd come on the show. So my mother, all my uncles could play. Of course, back in them days,
Play what? Play the.
well, they played fiddles, guitars, harmonicas. They played them. What do you call them? Juice harps. But anyway, when I was just a little old kid, I learned to play the harmonica right off the bat. I could play that theme song for Just Plain Bill as good as he could. After a little while, I'd steal Mother's harmonica and get outside the house and wait. Of course, them old houses, they didn't have no insulation. They had the windows up in the summertime. If you didn't, you'd burn up. So I learned right off the bat to play that harmonica. And then, back in them days, they didn't want the kids, the men that had the instruments and played, didn't want the kids mucking with the instruments because they couldn't afford to buy new ones. And that's back in the days they didn't know nothing but black diamond strings, and they had some of them, if they was lucky, had an old Gibson guitar, which was a good one, or didn't see anybody had Martins because didn't nobody have enough money to buy one of them Martins back in them days. And I don't know what kind of fiddles they had, the brands they had, but we had guys that lived around here and come through that could play just as good as anybody in Nashville, Tennessee could, or anywhere else. And in fact, they had a big Indian guy lived over on the river there. His name is Lois Landers. And Lois Landers, they ain't never been nobody, I don't guess, could beat him playing the fiddle, but he could play anything. And him and Uncle David Whisenhunt, John and Jess Dale, two colored men from Bonham, and Raleigh D. Odom, and Glenn Odom. And there was an old man, I believe his name was Fate Van Hooser. He played at Nashville, Tennessee, and he'd come through, and all them Burgers, Victor Burger played, and Billy Burger played, and there's a bunch of them Burgers. And every time these old men would come through, well, they'd gang up and they'd play music. And of course, back in them days, we didn't have nothing, no TVs, and no electricity, no nothing. They just go to somebody's house and play out in the yard, if it's pretty weather. And that's where, by the time I was nearly old enough to crawl, I was interested in music. And my dad, I never saw but two guys till I had played for years and years and been to bluegrass festivals everywhere. I never saw but two men that could, I guess you'd call it clogging. They could beat out a tune with their feet. And I've seen my dad get up many a time at night, put them brogans on, they'd be playing one of them old breakdowns, and he could just beat out a tune with his feet. Bill Kirkpatrick could do the same thing.
Now, would they be standing or would they be sitting in a chair?
There's a standing up dancing. I mean, and they could just
exactly what I'd call tap dancing.
Well, no, it's not exactly tap dancing, but they could just beat tune out with their feet.
I see.
And it's amazing, and I'd never seen that. But there's only two that I ever saw do it. Till me and my wife went to Canton to a bluegrass festival, and there was a woman had a band, and I stayed to the last draw before dinner because I wanted to hear this woman play Shogun's Waltz. there was a guy named Shelby Foote, narrated a TV show about the Civil War days, and he played this woman's song that Shogun's Waltz. Well, I stayed, and everybody left but me and my wife and a few more, because I wanted to hear that woman play Shogun's Waltz. Well, anyway, when she got through playing this tune, she said, "Now we're going to have a dinner break," but she said, "We've got a dance floor out here," and said, "Anybody wants to go over there?" Said they're going to have an exhibition from some people, and I can't remember their name, but they was from San Antonio, Texas. So I told my wife, I said, "I'm going to go over there and watch them people and listen to the music." Well, I went over there, and they had, I believe it was six or eight people. And I don't know whose version of Sally Gooden is playing, but it's one of the best ones I ever heard. And they had these people were all professionals, dancers, and they had an Indian boy on there, was just like a toothpick and about 6'6", 6'8". And he put on a show that my dad had been proud of him, because that guy could beat out a tune with his feet too. And I'm telling you that was worth all. I told my wife, I said, if I hadn't seen nothing else, it was worth it to listen to that guy play that tune with his feet. I mean, that guy's playing that fiddle, and that boy was dancing. I mean, he had it.
Is there anybody currently who does that kind of dancing that you know of or heard of?
No, but I'm sure that there's people that does it, but I don't know what they call it. Yeah. But it's.
Do you have any recordings of that? What was the name of the song you showed?
The Shogun's Waltz?
Yeah, do you have a recording?
No, well, I probably have somewhere there at the house, because I've got hundreds of tapes.
Yes.
But
do you have any tapes of music that been made in groups that you participated in?
Oh yeah.
Really?
And but anyway, what I started to say, by the time I was nearly old enough to walk, I was interested in music. Well, my Uncle Dave Wisenhunt, he brought an old guitar and a Kalamazoo mandolin over at the house. He was going off to work somewhere, I guess probably working on one of them. He built a lot of barracks for the troops. And they didn't show me no chords on them things or nothing. But my granddad was kin to the Monroes, and he had every record that Bill and Charlie Monroe ever made in one of them old wind-up Victrolas. Well, I finally got in there with that guitar, and I finally figured out how to tune this guitar with them. And Maybelle and AP and Maybelle Carter had a tune that they called the Wildwood Flower. And it wasn't too long till
was that on the radio, the Carter brothers, or
Carter family, yeah.
Yes, Carter family.
Yeah.
And you were listening to them on the radio?
On a record, had record.
Okay.
And in 1928 they made, and I think that was the first million seller, I think. But anyway, it wasn't long till that Wildwood Flower was coming right on out of that guitar.
That you were playing?
Yeah. And then I got that mandolin, I finally figured out that the mandolin and the guitar, they're played by position. And you just move down the neck of her, and when you find where they're at, you get after it. So I learned to play the guitar and mandolin. I played all my life and enjoyed every minute of it. Did
you ever play with your Uncle Wisenhunt?
Oh yeah, I still got tapes. In fact, I got here the other day. I was listening to a tape we'd made. He's been dead for 20 years, and I was listening to a tape we'd made. He was playing the fiddle, and I was second to him on the guitar. And
now, are these on cassette tapes?
Yeah.
I'd like to have an accompaniment to this interview with some music that you would be especially interested in.
Well, I've got some in my, I used to go over and see my uncle after he got old. Well, I'd go over there, and he left to play the fiddle. And, of course, nobody else was interested in, when a person gets old, well, they ain't got nobody to visit them much. And I was always going over and visit him because I loved him just like he was my own daddy. And every time I'd get there, he'd say, "Son, get that guitar and fiddle." And
Now, what kind of music was that called? What was that called in that day, or was it a genre that we would recognize today still?
Back in them days, they played some tunes we'd call bluegrass, but mostly it was old-time fiddle tunes, like Billy in the Low Ground, Sally Gooden, and Soldier's Joy, and Fire on the Mountain, and that kind of stuff. And Maggie, and of course, they played a lot of them old church songs too.
Now, did you play with a group then after you developed your own capacity? Was there a group that you played with?
Oh, I played several different bunches. We had a bunch down there. They were called High Prairie Boys. I played with for a long time, and I played
around here in the county. You mean?
Oh yeah, and I played the mandolin most times, but now I get to where I just mainly play the guitar.
Now, what about singing? Do you sing as well?
Not if I can help it.
I thought you were a singer.
Well, I could, but I don't.
Well, I didn't mean right now. But you enjoy it, don't you?
Oh, love it, yeah.
Love it, yeah.
What people don't realize about music, a lot of people, music is relaxing. You can get all tensed up and got all kinds of problems and stuff, and I can grab up that guitar and throw that choke on it, and just them wildwood flowers, they'll just start drifting out there, and directly you'll start smelling them flowers, and first thing you know, you forgot whatever you was thinking about. And
you don't have to be in a group to do that, do you?
Oh, no, yeah. I play that thing all the time. Them old church songs like Church in the Wildwood and all that kind of stuff. Just uncloudy day, they just come drifting on out of there.
But they also bring back a time.
They bring back precious memories.
Right.
Now, my granddad, he loved he could play a fiddle.
Really?
And every time the guys would come, they'd come over to the house and they'd get out there on that porch and they'd be playing. And I had an uncle, my mother's uncle was a guy named Bill Grant. And Bill Grant could play a 5-string banjo as good as Earl Scruggs could. And they'd all gang up there and they'd go to playing. Well, Granddad had always wanted to play Maggie. And they'd start playing Maggie and Granddad would go to crying. Now, I don't know whether he had an old girlfriend named Maggie or some of the families named Maggie and something happened to. I never did find out. But every time they played Maggie, Granddad would cry. And I always thought that's the funniest thing I ever seen. A grown man crying because they're playing a song. But evidently, whoever Maggie was, he must have loved her.
Do you have a recording of that?
No.
Not really?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, I probably got a recording of me and Uncle Dave Wisnut playing it probably. But
really? Okay.
Uncle Dave made a lot of tapes of me and him playing back years ago. Well, I'd go over there and
do you have any memories of Lake Fannin when it was, of course, it was opened in 1938, but did you go there with?
Oh, we used to go down there and go swimming down there, but the first real memories I have of Lake Fannin, we went down there and I guess I don't know what it was, long about the end of the war or right after it. I was just a little bitty kid. And they had Sherman tanks under every cedar tree down there, them guys on maneuvers down there. And, but the Lake Fannin down there, my granddad, Odom, he used to live on that hill right there east of that old lake. And him and old man Harvey.
A black man?
They lived neighbors together, and they was down there cutting wood one time on the side of one of them hills down there, and it come a tornado. And my granddad, well, he was as strong as a bull, and he grabbed old man Harvey around a tree and got him by the arm, and it blowed the top out of that tree, and old man Harvey always thought Granddad saved his life. And he named one of his boys after him, Millard. You might remember Millard. But Millard Harvey was named after my granddad.
Is that right?
And the first day that they opened up Lake Fannin after they got it fixed, I think I don't know whether the WPA or the CCC fixed it, but
it was called the Rural Resettlement Administration, and that was the group that built all these government houses down here in
the bottom.
In the bottom, yeah.
But anyway, the first day it was open, my dad caught 2 bass out of that thing, and I guess probably the biggest that's ever been caught out. Seemed to me like they weighed 6-7 pound apiece. Caught them on big old shiners, and he laughed about that till the day he died.
Of course, there was a lake at Lake Fannin before
Oh yeah,
the current lake. It was called Club Lake.
Yeah,
it was a smaller lake
yeah.
that a lot of people knew.
But it was, and that lake's still full of crappie, and it's got, of course, a lot of people don't realize it, but it's got red ear brim in it. And of course, I guess a lot of people don't know what they are, but they get a lot bigger than regular brim. And they was in there years ago. I know I'd volunteered for the draft, and I thought I was fixing to leave for the Army, and me and Hugh Pig went down there. He took me down there fishing. We went out there and caught a boatload of them things, and crappie. But I guess I was lucky in a way. I was 4F when they wouldn't take me.
So you didn't actually go, yeah.
But yeah, I went down there to Lake Fannin many times. I never could figure out how come the turtles loved that lake so. That upper lake, there's turtles in that by the hundreds.
Right.
We used to go down there, and I bought a pistol one time. Thought I'd make a pistol shooter. Got 2 or 3. It's a 22, and it's made like a 45. And me and them 2 Kirkpatrick boys went down there, and we nearly burnt the barrel off that thing. I don't think we ever killed a turtle.
Turtles in the lake. Right. You mentioned for music, hearing the music on the radio. Were the movies of that period of any influence to you? I'm remembering Gene Autry and Roy Rogers and those.
Oh, well.
Did they have any particular?
Well, he's back in the saddle again, Roy was, Gene.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Happy Trails to You, that's Roy.
Right.
But that was in the late 40s whenever I can remember they'd have that best theater up there, and it had them. And if we was lucky enough to get to come to town, you could go over to Parsons over there and get you a hamburger and a soda pop. Take a quarter now, just a quarter.
Right.
You could get you a hamburger and a soda pop. Have 9 cents to get in the show.
I started to name 9 cents. I remember that so well.
But people don't believe that, and I tell that.
Right.
I was telling my daughter about that one day, and she said, "Well, Dad, you're an old fogey. You know that ain't so."
Oh, it is so.
I said, yes, it was so too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And still had, when you got in the show, still had a penny to get you a penny piece of candy.
That's right.
Yeah, Lash LaRue, he come along about that time in late 40s, early 50s. There's the best, the elite, and American, wasn't it?
That's right.
But that was a different area. People back in them days, they had a love for their fellow man that they don't have today. And everything was different. Even the churches was different. People loved each other back in them days. And you could go to a man's house asking for help. You got help. If there's any way he could help you, he's going to help you. Everywhere, every community was. But that's a thing of the past.
Yes.
That's progress for us. They've done away with everything, and before long they'll be doing away with the churches.
Are you still involved in a church anywhere?
Yeah, I still go to Ivanhoe.
Right.
But the churches are not what they used to be, and we're living in a day and an age where the preachers, a lot of them, look at it as a job instead of a calling. And I think it's going to they've got into politics, and it's going to run the church as we know it today. But that God said that Jesus said that it'll be here to the end.
Yes.
But there's been people being deceived every day when you turn that TV on and them preachers telling you send me that cash and I'll pray for you and you'll just be in good shape. That kind of stuff. Then they're fooling people into believing that's religion.
Yeah.
And it's a joke. And same with politics. They're getting people involved in the churches for the votes. And that's a mistake.
Coming back to that in a minute, but as you were growing up, was there much of a strong sense of political activity? For example, in the aftermath of the Depression and the recovery and Roosevelt, was there much of a sense of participation in that level in your family?
My dad and all the people I knew, they could remember that depression well. They'd lived through it. Of course, I come along right after. Of course, it was still on. I mean, even in the 50s down here. Now, some in the cities, in the big cities, it might have been different. But as you know, you was raised up, and we were people. They worked like dogs and had to raise everything they had to eat because there wasn't no money. You couldn't have whooped one of my dads, my dad or his sisters, or my granddad, and got them to vote for Republican because they remembered that depression and them guys getting out there on the White House lawn playing football and stuff and people starving to death. And they believed in everybody having something to eat. And I was raised as that same theory now, but I have voted for Republicans.
You have?
I sure have. I made a mistake, and the last time I made a mistake was Richard Nixon, and that's the last mistake I'll ever make in this lifetime as far as voting goes.
My daddy used to say that he voted one time for a Republican and he nearly starved to death in the next few years.
That's right. They didn't forget that either.
And he never forgot it.
And that's the way it is. But you know, when I was a young man, of course, you never heard politics mentioned much whenever I was a kid at all. They're just Democrats, and that's it. And I mean, they didn't care how you voted. If you wanted to vote for Republican, that's your business. And I think that's the way it ought to be now. But, well, I tell you what, I went to a meeting here, it's been 2 or 3 years ago. I can't remember just how long. And there's a preacher there. And we was having a meeting, a church meeting. And this guy that had been a prisoner of war told me with tears in his eyes that was the saddest day of his life. He had been a preacher for years and years and years since the war. And he could see that politics was guiding the church. And he said he told me, he said, this is the saddest day of my life. We used to say, of course, I was raised up with the blacks.
Really?
And over there, you know, we all worked together. We had to, everybody. I mean, nobody had nothing. And I always said that there's white niggers and black niggers. And I was one of the whites. And I still personally believe myself, if they'd have put it to the vote, put it in the polls to give all them the colored people rights, I don't think there would ever been a Selma March. There would never been nothing. But I think that the government wanted that, and I don't believe there'd been no trouble at all because you know yourself, we was all raised up working with these people. And they're just people just like us. Right. But I know now that like east, maybe down there in Alabama, Mississippi, down in there, I'm sure that the blacks outnumbered the whites 10-1, probably in some places down there. But I see, and I guess that they might have wanted to hold power, but I'm doubting it. I believe if they
meaning the whites wanted to keep power.
Yeah, I say if the government had put it to a vote for the people, I think they'd give them black people their rights back there in them 50s with no problem. Mm-hmm. Don't you? Well, you know yourself that down yonder, North Telephone, yes. Northeast, that they was still slavery going down there whenever we was boys.
Now that was on the Goss farm.
Well, I can tell you that my granddad and one of his brothers would go down there and help old man Goss round up cattle. And I know, I told you about that. They're going down there, and they had them people, and they're just indentured slaves is all it was because they had them work for that company store, and they couldn't never get out of debt. It didn't make no difference how much they worked. And I remember my granddad telling me they was down there rounding up cattle, and said one morning they went out to get their horses to leave out, and a guy come riding down the road, and whooped in and asked for a job, and they told him they had a bronc out there that couldn't nobody ride, or they told him they needed 2 horses, just saddle up that horse out there. Granddad said that old boy roped that horse. He said, you ain't never seen such in your life going on. Said he snubbed him up, put a saddle on him, turned him loose. Said he rode that old bronc till he quit bucking. Said he got off that horse and he told that old boy, that foreman, he said, I shoot just exactly like a ride. He said that guy helped him round all them cattle up, said they had them scattered all over that river bottom and over in Oklahoma and everywhere else. And he said when he got through, well, one evening there, they'd been talking, and one of these guys said, he told them he was fixing to leave, and they said, well, we'd like to leave, but we can't. He said, they'll kill us. And he said, well, if you want to leave, he said, I'm leaving tonight. He said, you can go with me if you want to. And he said, 2 of them guys went with him. Said, of course, next morning they put them guys and hounds on their trail. And my granddad said he met that guy several years later, and he asked him if them guys ever caught up with him. And he said, yeah. He said, I left them laying down there on the river down there. So he had killed them.
And maybe a couple got away with him?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, would they have been black people that got away with him, or just whites that were working?
I don't know. I never did ask Granddad whether it's...
Yeah, right.
But I know that there was a bunch of Indians lived there where Bodark Springs was.
And you know that side.
And Granddad said that old man Goss went up there and told these Indians that him and his boys was going to help him round up them cattle. And this Indian told him he didn't own them cattle, he wasn't rounding them up. And old man Goss told him that if he didn't help him, what's going to happen, he'd burn him out. And the old Indian told him, he said, well, you can't sleep 24 hours a day. You can't stay awake 24 hours a day. So that meant him and his boy to do some raiding too.
Yeah.
And he's told me about them down there having them, and I thought it was funny. And I read about it in later years, but I thought he was kidding. But them Indians would gather up and they'd have terrapins. They'd catch terrapins and have a big terrapin cooking.
Cooking?
And he said they'd set a big brush pile on fire, and they'd gather up them terrapins. They'd throw them terrapins in that fire and cook them. He said, boy, they'd have a feast. My granddad's uncle, him and his wife went up here. I'll think of the name of the place over here in Oklahoma. Well, he was full-blood Indian, but his wife wasn't. And they moved over there right after the Civil War, up there across from Wichita Falls up there in Quanah. And she was always talking whenever I was a little boy about how they was afraid of the Indians. They was afraid of them Comanches. And I always thought that's funny because her husband was a full-blood Cherokee. But they was afraid of them Comanches. And back there sometime, I don't know just when it was, but they didn't have any children. And they had them little old bottoms down there was the only places moist enough mainly to raise crops. And they had a little old bottom and wheat down there. And they lived in a dugout. And it come a tornado, and after the tornado's over, they went down to the bottom to see if it destroyed their wheat, and when they got down there, they heard a baby crying, and they found this baby in an elm tree down there, and it was a little boy, and they went back to the closest place they could advertise was Wichita Falls. So they went to Wichita Falls and put it in the paper. And they never found out nothing, and they raised that kid. They didn't know whether his parents was in the wagon train, or they never did find out what happened. And I thought that was the strangest of instance I ever heard tell of.
Yes.
But
as you were growing up in this county, of course, Clyde Barrow was born in Ravenna.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether you ever knew that. He moved away as a child.
Well, yeah.
A toddler, as Miss Josephine said.
Well, I've heard my dad tell about meeting Bonnie and Clyde.
Really?
Yeah.
in this country, or?
Oh yeah, yeah. He said one day, you know, that used to be the main road right there by our house.
Yes.
Back over there, and anyway, I guess they'd built 78 by then, and they'd got back over there somewhere. I guess they'd been off on one of the rampages, and they was coming back through them dirt roads, and they was wanting to get back here to Mulberry, because Raymond had some folks lived over across the river.
Now Raymond
Hamilton.
Was he running with?
Oh yeah, he was with Bonnie and Clyde, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
And anyway, Dad said that it was just Bonnie and Clyde, and they was wanting to know how to get back to Mulberry, and he was down on that dirt road down there, and he said he told them just exactly how to get back down here to Mulberry, and said they thanked him and went on. And that wasn't too long before they got shot. Frank Hamer, he cornered them down there. And it used to be a guy over at Avenue named Guy Rue, and he'd quote that poem, you know, that she wrote about someday we'll go down together and they'll bury us side by side. To some it means grief, to the loss relief, but it's death for Bonnie and Clyde. Right. I've laughed many times about him. And you know what? You talk about Bonnie and Clyde, and my aunt, I guess till the day she died, she could remember hearing on the radio about them killing Bonnie and Clyde, and she said people were scared to death. I don't know what she thought was going to happen just because they got killed, but it scared people. But no, this country here, what people don't realize, there's lots more history here in Fannin County than people realize. Right. You know, Cole Younger, you know, he joined the Confederate Army in Bonham, and then there was Jesse and Frank, and their sister taught school up there at Sherman, and they'd get on them tours. This was their hideout grounds down in here. When they had Jesse and Frank had hideout ground people down here they stayed with when they'd get on them tours. What I was going to tell you, that one of the funniest things, I was a little kid, you know, back whenever we was kids, well, a lot of the old people, or most of them, dipped snuff and chewed tobacco. Well, the only time us kids would get to go to town, we maybe once or twice during the summer. They was going to have a first Monday up there one time, and I was a little old kid, and I went with Paul. Me and Paul and Dad went up there, and the old men, they had what they called the spit and whittle benches up there on the courthouse. Back in them days, they had shade trees out there. And, of course, the old men would sit on the benches and talk. But this particular day, the wind was blowing a little, and we got up on the courthouse steps there, right by the bathroom there, you know.
Is that the east side of the courthouse?
Yeah. And anyway, there's an old man come by, and Granddad, and sit down. He sat down on the step right there by Granddad. And Granddad had just put a big dip of snuff in his mouth. And this old man asked Granddad something. You know, of course, Granddad was getting like me. He couldn't hear it thunder. And he said, "Huh?" When he did, blow that old man's eyes full of snuff. You ain't ever heard such cussing. I won't never forget that. That old man was jumping up and down.
And you saw that yourself?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my. Well, that's just one of the things that happened on the courthouse square.
I'm sure. Yeah. Well, you know, back in them days, of course, it's probably against the law to do it now, but, you know, you could go up there on Saturdays, and there's so many people there, you know, you couldn't walk around the sidewalks, and there'd be a preacher there, and even whenever I was growing up and grown, well, Jack Ball, he'd preach out there some on Saturdays, and they had another old man there. I'll think of his name. I can't think of it right off. But they'd have a preaching out there and a singing. They'd sing and preach. Of course, I'm sure now that it's probably against the law to do that. But my, how times have changed. Yeah, a lot of people needed to do what you're doing 40 years ago anyway. And if we'd had some of them old tape recorders, my God, my granddad, when he moved to out there at Blanton's Chapel out there west of Leonard, he moved in and had a neighbor, Floyd Todd. Well, Floyd told my granddad one day, he said he's going to move, but he didn't tell him where to. And so granddad said Floyd left, said he didn't know what happened, where he went. And he said he bought this place, come down here and bought this place down here, and he was walking down the road one day and he met Floyd. Floyd was one of his closest neighbors. So we've been neighbors to Todd's for 100 years.
They'd been in Leonard first.
Yeah.
And then
And then when he
down here.
Yeah.
I'll say.
That's amazing. And old man Todd, he had a little old store over. I used to have some, and I still got it somewhere. I don't know where it's at. A map. It showed all them old roads. It was back in the early days over around home. Of course, half of them they've closed them up now.
You mean around Ivanhoe or?
Yeah, I know where I live. Well, they used to be a road you could go over, and you could go in down there right behind Crane's store and go east and come out over at Lake Fannin. Well, or you could go over east of me where the road tees over. You know where that road tees over? You could take a left and go down through there. And even whenever I was a boy, you could still go through that road. But the bridge washed out over on Betty's Creek, and they didn't replace it. Mm-hmm. And all them roads run together down there. But yeah, you could go right in there. But my grandma's place, just open the gate and just drive right on down to the crossing down there on Sycamore Creek and go right on through there and go right to come out over at Lake Fannin.
Do you have a copy of that map somewhere at home? Or?
Yeah.
The reason I say that is Ella Whisenhunt Reamer let me copy a map of the Ivanhoe area around 1910.
Well, that's probably it.
Probably, maybe the same map.
Maybe
it shows all those roads.
Yeah.
And shows who lived.
Yeah.
Mrs. Bridges and Captain Dupree.
Captain Dupree, yeah.
And those, and I have I've scanned that, and I have that on the computer here. Those maps are just fascinating to me.
Well, I'll tell you the one that, of course, he's dead now, but Lucille Todd is the one that had that map. And at one of their family reunions, of course, I was always, after I got up inside, me and them boys, Bill Kirkpatrick's was together and played music together, and we'd go over to Granny Todd's, and I'd listen to them tales she had to tell, and she loved music better than a hog loves slop. And her daddy was a champion fiddler at Nashville for years and years and years, and she told me, when we'd go over and get to playing, and she told me said her and her dad would go to that fiddle contest, and sometimes it'd last 3 weeks till they finally decided who was the best fiddler in the bunch. And she's told me about babysitting for a man and his wife, keeping the 2 kids while they went to somewhere there in Tennessee. I don't know where it's at, but they had to go to a town for some reason, and so she kept the kids, and a panther got on top of the house, and she said that she burnt nearly everything in the house, smoking him, keeping him out of the chimney where he wouldn't come down the chimney.
And that was before they moved to Texas.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And that's the reason I'm telling you, and all that's lost.
Yes.
All that good stuff's lost, even my grandpa's, but except what I can remember.
Yes, exactly.
And my grandpa Odom, he's done the same thing. He's talked to me and told me them stories. And old man Arch Hanks, all them old people. And of course, I didn't have sense enough to write it down. I was just sitting there just.
Oh, of course.
And it's gone.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I tell you, we should have done this 50 years ago.
Yes.
And
well,
if he just had all these old tales and just make him a book of these, it'd be a bestseller of the family. Cause people, well, I guess it would. I don't know what it would.
Well,
people ain't interested now like they used to be.
Well, I hope they are. As I sat and listened to Catherine Keaton, Gibbs Keaton.
Yeah.
She has a way of talking that just brings it to life.
Oh yeah.
Just like you do.
Yeah.
And it's just such a wonderful thing to know that we can still capture some of it.
That's right. And what I wish is that we had the people still loved each other like they did back in them days, and that we could go back. But that's kind of that song, like, oh, I can't think what his name was right now, but he wrote that song about time won't turn back.
Yeah.
You got to live life as you go through it.
Right.
You can't look back. You got to look forward. Now my family was hunters, and
even back in Missouri, you were saying.
Oh yeah, and here too. And they had them old hounds, And you could always tell a workman because there's going to be a hound around the place. And here, my nephew, my brother's grandson, he's was 6 day before yesterday, and he's going to be a hound, man. I mean, it's a family trait, I guess. Because anyway, this kid, me and Linda, I'll keep about 2 rick of wood there in the garage for wintertime where we won't have to do nothing to get out, it's be dry, and we'll have to bring it in the back door. And I'll keep out cat food. I just get a sack and just tear it open. Dog same way. I ain't got a dog or a cat either. Anyway, we went outside one morning there with the baby there, and he looked up there, and I counted them cats. There's 8 cats laying on top of that wood. He calls me Uncle Granddad, and my wife ain't Granny. He said, "Hey, Granny, we need some more cats." And so, it's
Yeah.
You can tell it's just a trait, workman trait. That they like to run them foxhounds. And now I'll tell you what I will do some of these days when I find it. Now, I don't know where it's at right now, but I've got some letters that my great granddad wrote to a paper somewhere there on the White River. He had at one time had a ferry, I think. Him or his brother won on the White River there in Arkansas. And I've got somewhere I've got some letters, and I intended to look them up, and I forgot it. But he had wrote back that was having a centennial or something. It's like 1914 or something. But anyway, he wrote this letter to this newspaper deal, and for them publishing the paper. And it told about how the early days there in Arkansas and the hunting and the fishing, and of course he told all about them foxhounds. He loved to run them foxhounds, and he'd hunt them deer. I've heard my grandpa told me many a time he'd stood on that hill behind where Lake Fannin is, and he said Red River was 8 miles wide. Well, I've heard my dad talk about that 1919 one.
A mulberry storm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Did he come over here to see?
He's told me tales about somewhere down there in the bottom down there. He rolled up that barbed wire and a great big roll hitting the fence post.
Yeah.
Had posts and pieces of timber through the trees. And boy, he talked. It must come right down that road.
Well, now listen. Let me ask you this. Now this is the picture I referred to earlier, and there's in front of a house here with your grandfather second from the right.
Yeah.
And he's with
the Blanton family.
The Blanton family, as you said.
Old man Ben Blanton, and that's my granddad. And I guess, I don't know, I'm just sure that these his boys, let's say me like this, family, yeah.
Now, did you tell me that this house was somewhere up here on Caney?
Somewhere on Caney, yeah.
Here in the county?
Yeah.
All right.
And I'm sure that this picture's probably made back, I don't know, probably the 80s, I don't know.
80s
80s,
90s, yes. From the kind of material it's mounted on.
Yeah.
Milking a cow.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful picture.
This
is
here,
that in a barn or what?
No, this is my great grandmother, and this is made in New Mexico, and that is a dugout.
I was wondering if it was a dugout.
And this is old man Randall, my grandmother's mother and dad, and this is my grandma here, and I think this is Aunt Georgie Whitnut, I guess, here, and I don't know who that is.
Now here, tell me about this girl with the Indian costume.
Well, now this is one of the Cummings. This is Granddad's.
Bessie Cummings.
Mm-hmm. That's Grandpa's niece, and them kids. I've got a picture of her and her brother, and they've got them Indian costumes on, but both of them's got store-bought shoes on. This little girl and her brother both. And I wouldn't be surprised what them might not be some of Jesse's and Frank's buddies, because Granddad said that they come by their place one time and had a guy shot.
Are you talking about Jesse James?
Yeah. And anyway, him and his daddy and went and took a pot down to one of the cabins they had down on the creek somewhere behind the place there, and heated up a bunch of water, and they give this guy a bunch of whiskey and throwed him down and cut this bullet out of him. And I reckon he got all right.
Goodness. Now, was that who's?
But Jim Cummings, and I don't know how he was one of Frank and Jesse's compadres, and I figured that it's probably one of this girl's uncles, or might be her brother. I don't know.
Was this real life costume she was
Sure.
wearing, or was
Yeah.
that? Okay, that's
Yeah.
That's not just a
No, and somewhere I've got a picture of her brother dressed up the same way.
with the feathers in her headdress.
Yes, sir.
Great. Well, that's wonderful. Now, here's a picture of your grandfather
That's yeah.
with the
That's-
family.
Yeah, and this is made probably, I'd say, about, probably 11 or 12, because I think she was born in 8.
Now, who is she here?
That's Aunt
from?
Georgia Wisnut. This is my dad. That's was Aunt Ethel Workman, and that's Aunt Opie Workman.
All right, now Aunt Opie is to far left, and then the grandmother,
Yeah,
and then your dad is
yeah, look,
Luck, and
Ethel,
next to her dad,
yeah,
and the child in front
Georgie.
is Georgie.
yeah.
Now I sure want to scan that. Now here's the tintype of your uncle,
John. That's Uncle
John.
But I don't know what the colored man's name was.
but that was just before the fight,
Yeah,
presumably.
yeah.
Goodness. And this is a tintype.
Can you imagine them letting the fact of one of them beat the other to
No,
death?
I can't.
But of course he was bunged up too. But he beat the colored guy to death.
In that particular fight.
Yeah.
Well, the colored guy is taller, at least, than he is. Now, here's a picture, as I said, of
Well, this is
David Whisenhunt.
This is Uncle David Wisnut. This is Lois Landers. This is a guy here that could play anything. It's
You mentioned him.
that you never heard anybody playing better than Lois Landers. I don't care where he's from.
Now, where did he live?
He lived down here on the river, down there behind north of us, down there on the river, and he played for dances all over the country. And I remember the guys are talking about T.B. Powell. You remember T.B. Powell? He was overseas during World War II, after the war, waiting on a ship to come home, and they had them USO shows. And he said they was shooting craps, and he said he heard this guy take off playing the fiddle. And he told him, he said, they just throwed his money and died to eat, so that's Lois Landers.
Oh, sorry. And the other two guys?
Anyway, he said that Lois, he went up there, and Lois was playing that fiddle, said that's the only human he's seen during the whole war, that in three or 4 years he was in service that he knew. And these two guys here is John and Jess Dale, and you've never seen a guitar like this guy playing.
No, I was going to say.
This is an 8-string guitar. He got 6 string down here, and I guess he used him for a bass. I don't know.
Have you ever seen one like that, or just a picture?
Yeah, I've seen him play. Yeah.
Oh, you've
when
seen
I was a
him
kid.
play?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these guys had a blind sister and she could play a piano like crazy.
I'll say. Did they live in Bonham?
Yeah.
The Dales did.
Yeah. Yeah, and I give one of these pictures here. I found this picture, and I made old Dale boy.
Judge Dale, you mean?
Yeah.
Joe Dale?
Joe. Well, I'd worked with Joe.
Yes.
And I made him one of them pictures. They was his kinfolks. They all went to, I think they went to California or someplace and come back. But them guys, they could really play.
As you think back, anything that you still haven't had a chance to tell me?
Well, there's probably lots of stuff that I could tell that I've heard my granddad tell about. And of course, back in mine and your day, a lot of, there was a lot of people poor people, they didn't nobody have money. And I've heard Paul talk many a time about the guys making whiskey and all of this stuff, and how many of them you know. And
these were the stills.
And I still know where one or two of them's buried.
The men or the stills?
Still.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know. I guess everybody They had to make a living some way, I guess. And I've laughed many a time about some of them guys, about them stories about them stills. On my mother's side, their people, I think, was French. But ain't got no idea what I could call my cousin and asked him, but I don't know what year they come over here, but my mother's, I guess mother's great granddad and his brothers, they bought a great big plot of land over there by Ivanhoe and set it out in grapes, and they made wine. And there was saloons after they made Ivanhoe. There was saloons in Ivanhoe. There was saloons down there where John Bruner's Curve is down there, North Ivanhoe. You know where the road turns east going toward Telephone. And they had saloons at Telephone, and they had saloons at Elwood. And these guys, they'd make wine. They sold barrels of wine to them saloons. And of course, I'm sure they made whiskey too, because two of them run the government distillery in Elwood, plumb up till the Civil War took place. And of course, when the Civil War took place, of course, I don't imagine they had any choice. They joined up with the Confederacy. Sure. And I've heard my granddad. He's told me many times about them giving up in Georgia. Said they didn't have no shoes. They had their feet wrapped in toe sacks. And said they hadn't had nothing to eat 2 or 3 days, and the snow was on the ground. They had them feet wrapped up in them toe sacks. They give up so they could get something to eat. And we'd take them things and lay sheets on top of the barn.
Dried them.
And we dried them apricots, and we dried peaches, and man's never had a good pie till he's had peach peelings. I mean, a peach peeling pie is the best in the world. I mean, the peaches ain't even in the picture.
Now, were they dried? Or just
No, they made
fresh from the peach?
I don't know how Mother done it, but some way or another, she sort of candied them things like making jelly, and canned them, and then she'd make them pies and fried pies. Boy, man, you talk about good. But any of that dried fruit makes better pies than the fresh stuff does. And me and my brother, of course, we was the smallest ones. That's our job, laying all that fruit out on top of that barn. Of course, they watched the sky just like a chicken hawk. If there's a cloud, 6 inches around, come up, but we had to gather all that stuff off that roof. And the second day, when you put them peaches and them apricots out there, that juice got in that cup. And boy, that's when they was really good eating. Me and that brother of mine, we'd sneak one every.
Now, you had a brother. Did you have one brother?
I had 2 brothers.
You had 2 brothers.
Jerry and Chris. Jerry's older than I am, and Chris is younger.
All right. Did you have any sisters?
No sisters. All my sisters was brothers.
Okay. 3 brothers then in the family. All right. Well, I'm just thinking that this is just the beginning of your stories, actually. And,
I know lots of stories, but
I know you do, and I appreciate so much though your being willing to talk to me.
Well,
and who knows, we may be able to have a second session of this one of these days.
That'd be fine. We've got